Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Buddhist Biohacker. And I am Lisa Gunshore, your host, and we are here today with one of my favorite monthly features, which is our Living Yoga with Satyam. Welcome back, Satyam. It's always good to have you here.
Yeah, wonderful. It's great to be here. This is always the highlight of my month, to come on and talk with you and discuss some of the aspects of yoga. And it's always a pleasure. I really look forward to it.
Oh, I do too. I think it's so good. And I really, really loved the Divine Masculine Roundtable you guys just did. It was so powerful. So I hope for those of you who are joining in that you have the opportunity to watch that, because you guys really shared a lot of intense conversation, I thought, about just things that guys don't usually talk about together.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I thought Scott did a really beautiful job of mediating and introducing the topics and really drawing from us, and it was great. I appreciate the session.
Yeah, it was so good. And I'm excited about our topic today. So today you're going to be talking about yoga and cancel culture, and I think this is a really good time to talk about this. So I want you to dive in. Before you do, I just want to say, everybody who's joining in the live, please share your comments and questions for Satyam. We'd love it when you do that. And if you're listening later on audio, you can absolutely join us in MeWe, MEWE.com, at our Buddhist Biohacker Forum. We love that as well. So yeah, Satyam, tell me about yoga and cancel culture. What a big topic right now. My gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just dive in here. And one of the things that I truly love about yoga is that it's an age-old theory and philosophy and approach to life, but it is so dynamic and so malleable and so present. And because it's based on such kernels of truth, that it is applicable to every age and every situation and every undertaking. You know, it's not a trend. It's a philosophy and a path of wisdom and knowledge and truth. And so when you have something like that, that's your stable base, then it can be steered in any direction to address any type of contemporary issue. And so that's really one of my favorite things about yoga, is that just how dynamic and how universal it is in its application.
Mm-hmm.
So then we come up to the topic of cancel culture, which is new for me, and it's a relatively new phenomenon. If your memory is only, if you're working with a memory of 2 years, then you'll think cancel culture has been around forever. But the term cancel culture is relatively new. I don't claim to be an expert on it. I'm not a sociologist. I will define it according to my understanding, and we'll work off of that. But that said, it is, I think the overall trend of cancel culture probably existed decades in the past, but it took on a more prescient and powerful existence really during the pandemic, is where it really came up. And so now I'm describing it. Let's go ahead and jump in and see what cancel culture is. What exactly are we talking about? And my education on cancel culture is really based on a dual show, part 1 and 2 on The Daily, hosted by Marco Barbaro of the New York Times. And it was very interesting to hear what was going on and what we've all seen it, but this was the label of it. And cancel culture, they said that its origin was based on a comedy show on Twitter, where someone had friends over and the toaster broke, and they were trying to make something from the toaster broke, and the person looked at the toaster and said, "You're canceled." And so it was canceled to show, it was meant as a joke, at least according to The Daily Show, that to kind of eradicate the toaster wasn't working, and so be it, it's finished. From there, it became this phenomenon of canceling people based on their actions, their deeds, their opinions, their backgrounds. And it became such an issue that that President Obama in November of 19, he was not a sitting president at that time, but he did have girls who were in college and high school. So he was quite familiar with the trends going on then of people just canceling out students or canceling out, among the young people. Obama defined it as like casting stones at somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then you feeling justified and righteous that although you may not have done anything yourself, but you casted a stone at somebody who needed a stone thrown. And Obama said, that's probably not going to get you all that far in life if that's your motive. Now, I do want to recognize that some people use cancel culture or may refer to it as a legitimate voice against someone who did something against society. Like if they have some type of racist perspective or some type of harmful demeanor, and they say, you know what, we're canceling you. We're not going to buy your books. We're not going to support your shows. And I want to say that, recognize that's a reasonable stand. I'm not addressing that aspect of, if that's your definition of cancel culture, is to speak out in a righteous, in a poignant and meaningful and constructive way about something that's clearly a degrading and degenerative facet of society, or someone's putting forth a view that is harmful to people and hurtful, then that's to be appreciated. But I'm talking about the cancel culture where you go into someone's past and demean them for an action they take that they may have rectified, and that's really what I'm after here in this session. And they say that from the pandemic, since we're all online so much and doing everything online, it's mushroomed and this effect. And maybe people have experienced it in their own lives. Maybe they've seen it from afar. Maybe they know a friend who's been hurt by it. Maybe it's been from their college scene or their high school scene or workforce. It's really quite pervasive. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it also in the political realm as well, where right now people's history is more and more becoming online. And when cancel culture is used to mudsling, to just toss a stone, to paint someone in a bad way, based on something they did many years ago, then we have to be super careful about that. Is someone going to lose their job because of something they said 30 years ago when they were 19? Mm-hmm. And this is where the confluence comes between yoga and cancel culture. The yogis say human life, by definition, people are going to commit wrongs. They're going to commit mistakes. And the beauty of human life is to take that opportunity to learn, to grow, to rectify those mistakes, and become a shining example of someone who overcame past difficulties. For instance, the greatest hero in yoga is a poet named Valmiki. He was a robber and a murderer. And he went to rob a yogi one night. And the yogi took him under his wing and said, "My friend, what are you doing with your life? Is this what your life is amounting to? You've come into this world to make an impression, and your impression is thievery, and you are not going to live forever. Is that what you want to leave behind?" And Valmiki was so touched by the yogi's words that he actually cared for him. He was not scared of being robbed, or fearful of his life, but he was scared for the example and for the effect that Valmiki's life was going to have. That Valmiki turned over a whole new leaf, and he became one of the greatest poets of yogic thought. And he's revered because he was not born on a lotus leaf. It was someone who rolled in the mud, like so many of us have done. But he rectified it. He made up for it, and he created a perfect example, a beautiful example for others to follow, both by his poetry and both by his path of rectification. That, hey, you made a mistake. You're not canceled forever. You're not wiped out. you have an opportunity. This is what human life is about, a perpetual look at redefining oneself and recovery and redetermination and reflection and growth. And that is what, and so we have to be very careful about permanently canceling someone or permanently closing the door on someone or permanently shutting someone down, saying you'll never get an air of oxygen to breathe again. You are out. You won't work again. You won't be part of the team again. And that goes against the basic ethic of yoga, that as a society, we're all on the same team and we're responsible for each other's growth and helping people come to terms with the things they may have done wrong and to grow, and for us to be open-minded enough to do that as well as human beings, to reflect on what wrong things we have and how can we right them. And it's really and it's something that we've all undergone in various ways. We all may have, like for instance, when I was in high school, we all used to chow down at McDonald's all the time. We did it all the time. At the age of 23, I adopted a plant-based diet, and I've been following that for the last 30 years. And I talk a lot about the benefits and that people should avoid fast food. Now, someone can say, hey, look, here's a photo of you at McDonald's in 1984 chowing down a Big Mac. You're canceled. You lost your voice. You can't speak about plant-based diet. You can't speak about human health. You can't speak about yoga. You're canceled. Right? Someone could say that. But the point is, if I ate a Big Mac yesterday, then their point is valid that, hey, you're a hypocrite. You're not following what you say. And I would say, you're right. That's hypocrisy. But the fact is, I didn't eat a Big Mac last week or last night or last decade or not since 1984, 85. And so, and in my mind and in my actions, I don't desire that. And, I'm focused on plant-based, and I'm representing that. So, so when there's a difference between hypocrisy and rectification, and that has to be, valued. Hypocrisy is hypocrisy. You can call someone out, especially if they're leader, if they're standing at the podium and they're a hypocrite, call them out. But if someone has done something in the past, but they clearly no longer represent that in their life, then from the yogic perspective, that person's fine. What's wrong? Rather, I remember when I was working with teenagers at a group home for substance abuse in California, Calistoga, California. Then at that time, all the other counselors had been through AA programs. That was not something I did in my life. And so the guys were saying, look, you're talking about all these things, but you haven't been in my shoes. You didn't have to go through AA program. And I could understand that because they felt that it was more valid in some circumstances to hear from someone who had gone through that difficulty, and it was more meaningful for them. Like, for instance, if I was born in a vegetarian family and never ate at McDonald's, someone say, oh, well, you were born that way. You don't know what, but someone said, oh, you used to eat at McDonald's and now you don't anymore. For them, that might be a more meaningful example that it's a hurdle that they also can then therefore cross. So there's certain value in that and that's why the people appreciate the Valmiki example so much, and that's so revered in yogic culture, is not because everybody's a murderer or thief, but that everybody has done some wrong, and it gives that scope that, oh, I can relate to that. If we were all born on lotus leaves and never thought a bad thought, never did a bad deed, and never, followed everything our parents said and so forth, so on, where's the challenge? Where's the glory in that? Rather than we have to walk our path and stumble and rise up. And so that's the basic overview of it, of this confluence and separation between yoga and cancel culture, that that there should be some patience, some of allowing people to grow and realize that they're going to fall. Like if a parent watched a baby learn to walk and said, "Oh, you fell," that I'm never going to help you walk again. That was you messed up. But we don't do that. We think it's funny, or it's sweet, or we make sure the baby doesn't get hurt, and we hold their hands and we help them to come up. And watching your child or your infant move through that process of learning to walk and watch them get success is so inspiring. Even though you've been walking for 20, 30, 40 years and you can do it fine, you don't have to think about it. But to watch someone else move through that process is really inspiring. And you'll go home and you tell your friends, "Hey, my baby, it took 3 steps today in a row. It did beautifully." And that other person will appreciate hearing it. So, and that exists along continuum with every other person, whether it be a new employee at work. You don't slam them the first day because they logged into the wrong system and say, "Oh, you're so dumb." No, you teach them and they'll get it the next time. And that's a lot about, people talk about, the Twitter trash or the different things on social media. And, if we could all kind of embrace this idea that there's a time to cancel if that person is a hypocrite, if that person is doing harm, but you can't just cancel for someone having fallen down or taken a misstep or had a bad perspective, but then grown and learned from that perspective. Maybe they used a slur in the past, but now they wouldn't dream of doing that, So, like one thing that came to light a few years ago, it seemed like they kept uncovering more and more people who did blackface in 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. And in that era, there really wasn't the awareness. I mean, heck, we're in a country that had slavery, outright slavery. And if you didn't have a slave, you might have been teased for not wanting to have a slave. I mean, it was so debased. And so naturally, there's going to be a progression out of that. And if someone did blackface, yes, it's horrifying, it's demeaning. But 40 years ago, it may have been in their youth when they were 18, it may have been just, so then we have to evaluate, is that really their mentality today? Is that, should they be canceled, that they can't do anything in public life because at the age of 17, they went to some party and did blackface? And if they're a spokesperson for the KKK, then you could say, yeah, that is who that person is to this day. But if they are, involved in social service, they're involved in all sorts of awakening groups and helping all different populations, regardless of then you have to say, okay, it was something they did in their innocence, in their ignorance of their youth, and let them continue on, especially when they've got a great public track record and they're clearly helping. So we really have to find that fine line of where cancellation, or where this pointing out, and when to give someone, say, a pass. They've rectified themselves. So, and it's it's happening in all spheres of life, in all different angles. And so that's the point. I thought it was an interesting. That's why I thought maybe we should come and talk about this, how yoga can address this issue of cancel culture and hopefully shed a perspective that some people might find helpful or meaningful.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're bringing it up. And I think I love the story. I haven't heard the story of the robber who changed his ways. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well. And it makes me think about, there's a lack of space being given to each other to grow and move through your own experiences. And I think what I've seen as somebody who's been counseling people for almost 20 years now, we can get frustrated when we see folks making poor decisions or something that might create suffering for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is an essence of being able to have compassion and to give space to that person to learn and grow on their own.
Mm.
And so this cancel culture piece is really it's interesting to me because it's an invitation really to learn how to give space to each other, to learn and grow and to have your own beliefs and values and to really explore what those are. Because I think, we're all in different phases of awakening. And so I think as we open our minds and our consciousness to various things, and I can say I'm a psychic medium. Like I've had plenty of people cancel me, right? Because
Right.
they think that what I do is either not real or they don't believe in it or it creates some sort of destructive emotion for them or whatever that is. And so, we have to give each other space. You don't have to condone people's behavior. But you also, I think there's a challenge or an invitation or an opportunity for us to give each other space and to have some compassion rather than immediately turning to the negative and like you said, canceling somebody for what they've done or what they believe or something because you don't think it's right.
Right. Right.
It's just your opinion.
No, yeah, absolutely. And the other interesting thing about that is by giving, I appreciate what you're saying, that by giving people space to grow and withholding comment ourselves, that actually gives us a little space to grow too. Because how often do we say something and then a few years later, a few months later, a few days later say, oh, now I understand what that person's about. Now I actually like that or I appreciate it. And it saves us from looking, like we stuck our foot in our mouths, just hold off. Let's see, unless something really dangerous or harmful is going on, let's see what that person's about. Let's let's explore it and be patient from withholding judgment right away. And that it gives both parties. It's a benefit for both parties that you have not already come. You're letting them to grow, but also you're giving yourself a little slack also because you haven't committed yourself to some potentially narrow-minded perspective on, a valuable pursuit per se. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it reminds me, I just posted on social media this week about projections.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
what we see, we're all each other's mirrors. And it goes back to the shadow work and projections and reflections and all those fun buzzwords. But ultimately, when we want to cancel someone out, I think being willing to be the student and to
Yeah.
say, what am I really learning from this? Like, what is it that's coming up in me that makes me not want to see this or hear this or feel this? I mean, that is your greatest opportunity for growth, I think, is being willing to say, you know what, I'm really angry, or I don't want to hear what this person has to say. Why? Like, what is that about? Especially right now, because there's so much polarization. There's so much one side or the other side. There's very little middle ground right now. And I think that creates, like you said, the mushrooming of this cancel culture. Like we've created this environment in 2020 where we are just canceling things out. We don't even want to look and see at anything. Where's the research and the learning and the being a student of the planet and of your life experience? I don't know. It just, that's my question for those that are canceling. And I think that's where, don't you think, Satyam, that's where yoga and the practices of the Yoga Sutras become so important, being able to have discernment, being able to be compassionate, being able to practice the middle way.
Yeah.
Like, what we need right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even if you disagree with someone, instead of canceling someone, what about dialogue? What about discussion? And so it's really come to some degree from the top down. But you're so right that the yogic values of what you're saying, compassion, of discernment, and they are so. I mean, it's the opposite of the trend. I mean, everybody has their own way of, but like you said, the 2020 trend that there's just so much tension in our public life, in our social life about that of already labeling something as being anti or against or the polar opposite. And that needs to be a refresh. We need to get a refresh of how we look upon things. And the yogic perspective is always, the yogis say, you can't become great. The yogic definition of greatness is you can't become great until you make others great. You can't become great by your own. That doesn't work. That isn't greatness. Greatness is only when you help make others become great. And by that token, that means anytime we see someone suffering from any type of fault, instead of canceling them and pushing them into the mud and pushing them under the water, our job is to cultivate, to encourage, to help. And if we look at our own lives, I mean, thank goodness someone didn't cancel me out when I was 6, when I was 16, when I was 26. Rather, people said, "Hey, look, you got a little." I encouraged all the way through, and not all the way through, but all the progress I was able to make was because other people helped me make it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't climb the ladder by myself. I didn't invent the ladder. I didn't build the ladder. Whatever small things or little things I've been able to advance in certain realms is because someone taught me, and they had the patience to watch me step in the bucket after I didn't get it right the first time. But they allowed me to, no, try again. Try, see what you can do. And then that is so needed. And we do that with the people we love. More, well, we try to do it. Sometimes we fall, but we try to have patience, and encouraging those who we love and those who are around. But it needs to be extended into our social sphere, into the people, and the difference between seeing someone in person and seeing someone online is that all of a sudden that person loses their heartbeat, they lose their face, and it's so easy to just slash and clash and demean online. And when we're doing so much of our life that way because of this pandemic, and then it doesn't just affect the person we're blasting, but it affects our own psyche as well, that we become the epitome of that destructive voice. We lose a little bit of ourselves in that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what you were saying about discernment, of compassion, of patience, I think it's those are the terms of the day, to help counteract this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, when we try to push something out, cancel it, negate it, there's just an underlying reason for it. And I think that's the inquiry to ask yourself is, well, why am I canceling this?
Uh-huh.
Why am I canceling this person, this thought, this objective, this whatever it is, because oftentimes I think we're avoiding something, we're running from something, we don't want to see something. And to your point, Sai, I'm not perfect. I mean, man, I remember going through the first part of my awakening journey, like back in 2006, and I had just gone to see His Holiness speak for the first time. And when you start to wake up to your own unconscious behavior, it's so ugly and hard. It's like, oh my God, like, what am I doing this for? And I did this wrong. And I think we still go through that layer after layer after layer, as seeing ourselves for who we really are. In fact, that's a book the Dalai Lama wrote, is How to See Yourself as You Really Are.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And so I think, we cannot have that judgment. I think judgment, you said it, that's a big word, like having the judgment and shutting it down rather than opening up the space and really looking at what's inside that space and what's really going on there. Because we know that the wounded are the wounders, right? Like, those that are, and I'm not saying that we should go out and, praise people who are hurting people, but I think, people who hurt people are also hurt. And I think that we have to look at what's really behind that and really ultimately awakening is an individual's awakening. And so I think with this cancel culture, it's about you looking at your individual values and beliefs and what the lessons are for you as an individual versus worrying about, there's so much about these big global values or beliefs or whatever they are. And I think those are worth looking at, but it comes down to your own individual experience too. I don't quite know where I'm going with that, but I just feel like there's.
Yeah, no doubt. It is an individual. There's a collective thing, and then there's an individual thing that everybody's going through their own. Everyone's got their own unique path that they're traveling on, and their own unique history. And so, yeah, it's multifaceted, and it needs, that the yogis say that if you see a wrong, if you see someone doing something wrong and it's something that you know the correct about, then you become at fault for not teaching them, for not, that type of ownership, like parents have with their children, that they would say, the parents ultimately, for the young, that, oh, I didn't teach my child that. That I have to teach my child that the parents. It's one thing when they're 19, but it's another thing when they're 3, 6, and 9, and you see the child say, maybe I didn't teach, or maybe I myself emulated that behavior. Why is my child behaving that way? And that type of ownership of society, and that's kind of like the yogic outlook, that we're all brothers and sisters. We all came from the same source, and we all, part of our job is to learn how to live together and to coexist and thrive, not coexist and just, oh, I can't wait for this hour to be over. And then I can leave this person. But the idea of how to really be dynamic and help everybody grow, and it needs that type of mindset. And part of it is that I'm responsible for society, that I'm responsible for the growth of society, that if something's wrong in society and that's something that I'm aware about, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I try and educate? Why didn't I bring that to light? What? And okay, maybe you, yeah. And the yogis say that those who are pioneers, they always face backlash at the beginning. But someone has to be strong enough. That's what will make you great and will help make others great. That you have to be able to stand up to it and continue with a cool mind to guide and to help, and by that way, good things can happen. But it's an interesting dynamic just because it's so pervasive and happening, to our youngest ones, being teased at school, to senior citizens who are, oh, you're old, you're really not good for much anymore. You're whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a whole mindset. It's not something that can be fixed in a moment, but it's something that it starts by looking at our own selves and teaching, projecting that at the earliest age to people about what it means to be part of a society. It needs a spiritual outlook. It has to be a spiritual outlook, that if you don't feel some greater connection with everyone around you, whether it be this earth or this society or people, then the hell with it, just toss people aside. Everything becomes expendable. Everything can be tossed in the dustbin. But the whole meditative approach and yogic approaches, we are one. And that oneness is not something superficial. And so if we're one, then we have to work through the things together. Whatever's wrong, we have to work with that spirit of togetherness and collective interest.
Yeah, here. Well, it's the interdependence.
Yeah.
The interconnectedness of each and every one of us and what we bring to the table. And you can't, that also that I don't know where that's at in the Yoga Sutras, but I know that there's a lot of discussion in the tantric documents or writings or whatever for Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism that talk about you can't have one without the other, talking about the yin and the yang. You can't have love without hate. You can't have light without dark. And so I think understanding that too, understanding that, there has to be all of these pieces, whether you agree with them or not, are all what make that collective whole. And you can't have one side without the other side. It's like you have to have all the sides.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole expression of this cosmos is filled with all sorts of seemingly antithetical expressions. And there'll always be that dynamic. Yogi says that's what makes this universe. What if everyone came onto this earth and everyone was perfectly realized? What would there be to do?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, right. But it isn't like that. We all come on this earth to learn and to figure out, and ultimately, and that's what makes this world so interesting. I mean, when someone makes a movie, they don't just show a flower and someone smiling, and that's the whole movie. People think, what kind of movie is that? That was so boring. And the movie writer can make any movie they wanted. And the moviegoer can choose to go at him, but they say, okay, there's spy. This person did deceit. That person did, and it makes the expression meaningful. And then you try and learn something. Well, there should be a message to the movie. Ideally, it shouldn't just be a whole bunch of mudslinging, but there should be some greater message. But that's what makes the movie meaningful and interesting. Whether it be, and not just movie, any type of expressive art, whether it be poetry or drama or dances or literature, that there's some type of storyline that brings you through and you grow with that storyline. It's not just like, well, the glass was full at the beginning, it was glass was full in the middle, and the glass was full at the end, and not like that. And so by living in this cosmic drama, we grow by being part of the storyline. But because we're living it, so it's diverse expressions. We look different. We speak different languages. There's so many, and to be able to overcome those differences, to see unity amongst the diversity, and to the yogis say that we don't have the right to punish anyone. All we can hope for is rectification. That as human beings, we can rectify others, and that even in our justice system, even if you catch the wrong person, the lesson given to them should be rectificatory in nature. That even if they do it, even if they didn't do the crime, but they do what you're asking them, they're benefited. Mm-hmm. That they're not, as opposed to like what we say, we cancel people in our judicial system. You did that and you're going to prison for 30 or 50 years, only to find out through DNA that they didn't do the crime.
Yeah.
And how the heck can you do such a punitive, that type of, and we see that in other aspects, but that's a clear cut. You when you put someone in jail, and these days jail is that's no place for anyone to be for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
We effectively canceled them out. And then to do it on an innocent person is just like, who are you to have done that to someone's life for 20, 30, 50 years? What could you possibly say to them? So the yogis say that in our judicial system and in our social life, we should not be punitive in nature, where you just cancel them or punish them just to teach them a lesson by inflicting harm on them, but there should be rectification. For instance, if someone committed a crime against humanity, one of the codes of yoga is that person then needs to bring 10 other people onto the path of morality. And they have and by them working to bring 10 others onto the path of morality, they are benefited, because again and again they're preaching those ideals, and their mind is colored in that way, and they become more and more themselves entrenched in that better path, and they have the opportunity to help and serve others and other people. So it's a win-win situation. Now, how to apply that through all the horrors we see, we have to think. It's not always that easy. Someone commits a horrific crime, and you say, okay, so we have to work that out. How does that theory apply? We all have to use our brains, but that's the nature of it, and that we shouldn't be so quick to punish and derive a certain sadistic joy from watching others get punished or inflicting that punishment. Mm-hmm. So we in this culture, in this kind of like materialistic culture, it's insidious. It's in all our, our judicial system is based on, quote, justice. But if we look, you don't always find justice there. You find and similarly in our social life. And so cancel culture isn't, although it's a term that became it's a contemporary thing that we've something that's online, but it's been with us for a long time in different shapes and forms, and it's in that mindset. We've grown up in a country or in a society or on a globe where it's been indoctrinated into us in certain ways.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's a difference between justice and judgment. And it's interesting because I read tarot, and in the major arcana of the tarot deck, there are two cards. One is justice, one is judgment. Those two cards are like the legal cards of the major arcana. And the meanings are very different. Justice is about balance and fairness and equality and seeing all sides and things karmically coming out in right action, where judgment is very much that it's judging and condemning and condoning and all those different things. And so I think of those two cards when you're talking as far as like, what's the difference there?
Yeah.
One of my questions for you as we're talking about, this whole concept of cancel culture is, so what are the tools? I think of like coming into a neutral mind, like what are those yogi tools that can help everyone? And I'd like to invite all of you in the audience, if you've experienced being canceled, if you had challenges with that, we'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear how you overcame it, or if you did, or if you have questions about that. But yeah, Satyam, what are some of the yogi tools that you think are the most effective to help folks as they deal with whether they're feeling canceled, whether they want to cancel somebody, like whatever's going on there, like how do they come into that neutral space?
Right. Good point. Let's first address the person who is doing the canceling. And then we'll talk about the person who's been victimized or been canceled. So if someone has a tendency to cancel, then the yogis would say that the first tool they should invoke is dhritti, which is patience. It's the first quality of a dharmaka, that one should be patient. Wait, just hold your horses for a bit before you cancel them, before you point them out. Get the full story. Find out, is this something that should be brought to light and should be discussed on the public platform? Or is it just that you saw some photo of them, you misunderstood the photo, and you're going to trash them all over the internet or whatever you're going to do with them? So the first thing is patience. Just hold off a bit before casting judgment or jumping into the whole cancel culture phenomenon. And then I think that's like an immediate tool one can employ. Okay, be patient. Then in the long-term schema, we need more spiritual values, more meditation, more understanding of who we are as a people. And that meditation, the yogis, when someone achieves greater states of understanding and realization, it just doesn't affect them individually. It affects how they look upon everything else in the world. That their heartbeat becomes not just their individual heartbeat, but with the greater cosmic heartbeat. They see every pain, every harm as an injustice, like on their own. Just like, let's say you're an individual, and then all of a sudden you get married. Then any injustice against your wife, you take that as your own. And then you have 1 child, 3 children, 6 children. And anything done to them, you take that as your own. Your mind is expanded to incorporate those 6 or 8 people. And the yogic mind is to incorporate the whole society, that no one is other, no one is outside you, and there should be justice. Um, and we get that way. Those people who really love plants, they hate to see plants destroyed needlessly. You know, those people who really love anything, wherever you link your mind with that thing, and meditation is that process of linking one's mind with the entirety of all humanity. It happens that way. And so when one has that mindset, then they'll always look to encourage and rectify rather than punish and cancel. But that's not something you can have someone say, okay, you start that in the morning and by the afternoon you'll have that mindset. We're all learning that over time. But if we try every day through our meditation, that's an organic process that will unfold, and we'll feel that over time. The other thing is try avoid groupthink. You know, like when you're with the other group, 3 people think it, you weren't really thinking it, but you're with those 3. Oh, let's all jump in and gang tackle someone. That's like the practice patience point. That you can be aware of in the moment. Am I just, gang tackling? Am I jumping into a mob psychology? Did I get? Am I getting swept up into a mob psychology or gang psychology? That's something that people can be aware about. And so. So those are a few things that come to mind. Now, in terms of the person who's been victimized, that's almost more difficult. That's more. It's not easy to help that person, because if you're there with them, then you can help them. But what if someone's been isolated, victimized, pushed on? Then what can we say to them now? And you can say, well, everyone is loved in this universe, but that can fall on deaf ears, and rightly so. It's true. Ultimately, we're all loved by this cosmos, but it's not easy to feel that when you've been pushed, teased, ridiculed, canceled, demeaned, diminished. So one thing is reach out, reach out to a friend, a counselor, someone who can help validate you right away. Said, no, that is not true. You are not what those people are telling you are. That is a big thing. And we should always be helping to validate. Like if a child comes home from school and is teased, then naturally the parents, that's the first thing they do. They may not say the term validation, but they say, no, you're meaningful. You have a rightful place here. And those people were not right in the way that they were teasing you. And so, it's, I'll tell you, there's the case. Let's go to a real life example where in this they talk about on the show The Daily, that incident where the woman was walking her dog and she saw the African American man in the tree who was he was a bird watcher. He was a bird watcher, and she called and said, "Hey, that guy's attacking me." And the whole 911 call, and she was totally, he was a bird watcher. He wasn't attacking her. So anyway, she got canceled, and then they interviewed him, and she was losing her job, a lot of things, and he said, "Hold off a second. We just need to hold." He was the victim. In that sense, he was the victim, and he became validated. Everybody saw that he was the victim. But from the victim's perspective, he even said, whoa, hold off on taking away her livelihood. What's she going to do then? Okay, in this instance, she was wrong, and we're addressing this, but are you going to, he said, I'm not okay with her just being banished from this world. That's not working. So there's a big dynamic. It's a big dynamic going. It takes a broad mind. It takes, you can't be out for revenge. You can't be out for, it really needs us all to kind of step up our game from all sides, from the witness, the victimers, and the one who did the canceling. So I think understanding, discussion, sitting down, those types of things are helpful. But if you've been victimized and you've been canceled, then reach out to a friend. But hopefully everyone has someone that they, and just, and get your self-esteem back, get your perspective that no, you haven't been canceled. Actually, it was the effect of a unfortunate mindset that someone else was walking around with, so
Mhm.
but I'm not sure if there's a one magic formula, but there's a collection of tools for short term and long term to help address this. Yeah.
And to your point, it's so complicated because the victims can also be, you get in that triangle cycle where you have the victim and then the caretaker and then the narcissist. And so you go, all of us are all three. And I think that's the point for everyone to get is you might be the person who did the canceling because you were the victim of canceling someplace else. And so it's this learned behavior. And it's also, if we don't feel validated, then we push back on other people so that they're not validated. And so at the end of the day, I think it comes down to compassion and forgiveness, but not even of other people. It's really of yourself. Because I think if you love yourself, if you trust yourself, if you understand yourself, then you don't have to go cancel anybody because you understand where you're at and you don't need anybody else to be where you are.
Right. Yeah. You won't feel benefited by pushing someone else down. You'll feel okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very well put.
And I think for me, that's probably been one of my biggest life lessons is understanding that my lack of self-worth, my lack of self-love was actually driving me, to put other people down or to create a space that wasn't healthy. Because I didn't trust myself. I wanted that outside validation. So I was asking for it and reaching for it and pushing for it. And so I think, the best work that everyone can do, and I'm so glad you brought this topic up today, Satya. I'm really glad because it really is a big topic and probably one we should talk about going into 2021 too. But, the most important thing we can do is cultivate compassion and self-love. I mean, really coming to a place where you love yourself, you honor yourself, because in doing that, you begin to honor others, and that space naturally opens up where they can have their own experience, they can have their own beliefs, and it's okay. It's okay for them to do that because you don't need to prove anything to anyone. That's real important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point is well taken. And that is the key, that people should feel self-assured, confident, and feel their place, that everyone who's been born was born for a reason. They have their place. And that is the yogic ideal that the fact that you were born is your validation. You've come here to do something. But that said, we grow up I didn't grow up with social media. I didn't really the computers weren't around, but we are indoctrinating into a society where people are growing up in social media. And it's very difficult when you're posting things and you want to be liked. And it's a natural phenomenon. Everybody wants to be liked. Although I didn't grow up in the social media, of course I want to be liked, on the kickball field, in school, all different things you want to be liked. Now it's much more dynamic, pervasive with this. The liking is more dramatic. It's right there in your face. Who liked my thing that I posted? And it's really a mindset that we have to be careful of because it goes against, we're indoctrinating children, youth, and even adults into a method of living that goes against all those values that you were just talking about that are so needed, that we don't need to be validated. Yet a lot of the basic foundation of social media is appreciation from others. And it's not easy to find that balance. Everyone, when we post something, we want to certainly get liked by it. But anyway, it's swimming upstream in today's society. That's what I mean to say, is that all these yogic ideals and these values that we're discussing, they exist across time and space, and they will be there. We're living in an era where they're not all that well. That's not the main operative modus operandi in our greater society, but we're working towards it. And in some sense, in some fields, you can see a lot of progress being made, and in others, there's not just yet. And people should know that, hey, we're living in a society where we're swimming upstream with this. So just be careful, and I think we should be careful with the children about how much social media really is indicative of what their value, their inherent self-worth.
Totally
So
agree.
yeah.
Such a great topic, and time flies when we are talking always. And I know, do you have a story for us today?
I do. I
was hoping.
I brought one of my terrible stories, and I'm going to force it on everybody here.
I love it. I love the story.
This goes back, way back. It's a Puran or mythology, the tale of Ram, King Ram, in ancient India. And without going into the whole Puran, and it's a long story, but there was one scene where he confronts the demon or the bad guy, and his name is Ravan. V in Sanskrit is pronounced as a W. Ravana, Ravan, silent A at the end, and Ram, Rama, silent A at the end. So you've got these two R's. King Ram, who is the personification of justice, of truth, of nobility, and Ravan, who is always up to deceit and undermining and pillaging. And they clash, and they have this tremendous battle. And ultimately, King Ram gets him and it finds the weak point of Ravan and pins him down and leaves him there. And he defeats him. And then while Ravan is lying, the defeated villain is lying, he calls Ram over and says, Ram, there's something I want to say to the people. And Ram could hear in Ravan's voice that there had been a change in his mind. And so even though they had just fought this vicious fight, he understood that the mind has changed. So he came back and he said, what is it that you would like to share with humanity? And Ravan said, the bad guy said, well, I always wanted to build a golden staircase to heaven so everyone can rise up there, but I never did it. And so tell people that when they have a good idea in mind, they should not procrastinate. They should do it. And Ram heard that. He said, wow, that's some profound, that's meaningful. I will pass that to the people. I will surely pass that. And then King Ram starts to walk away again. And then the demon Ravan says, Ram, come back. I one more thing I want to say. One more thing I want to say. And so Ram comes back and he said, what is it you'd like to share? He said, Ravan said, tell the people that there actually is a time to procrastinate. If they ever get a bad idea in mind, tell them to use all their powers to procrastinate. Don't act on that bad idea. Don't act on that bad idea. Wait just a bit, and a good idea will come into the mind, and then act on that good idea. And Ram was like, you really turned over a new leaf. That was great. And the yogis say that the mind is always fluctuating. It's always moving. So you get a bad idea, don't do it. Just wait till a good idea comes on. And then there's a yoga sutra, a yogic aphorism, Shubhasha Shigrum. Don't delay good things. Do those good works, delay the bad things, and it's a recipe for a good life. And I thought the story was kind of related with our cancel culture topic also a little bit. So people can
I love it, and I love you, and thank you so much, Satyam. This has been so great today.
No, and it's wonderful. I always treasure our times to come together and talk, and I always appreciate the opportunity and the dialogue with you.
Me too. And everybody who's listening, thank you for being a great audience. And if you're watching the replay or listening on audio, please share your comments and questions and stories. We love to hear them and love to hear your your own experiences, especially with this topic, because it's definitely up for everybody right now. And again, thank you so much, Satyam, and we'll see you in just a few weeks. And thank you to everyone, and have an amazing day. We'll be back on Thursday.
Okay, look forward. Namaskar. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.